Hi guys, how are you doing? It's so good to have you. It looks like we're having a stream issue. One of our streams is not live, but two others are, so we're going to go with that. You on Facebook? I wonder if I can. Sorry, I actually just want to try and see if I can fix this. Nicola, while I try and fix this stream, will you please introduce yourself and introduce our topic for today? I know I usually do that, but I am going to
Of
get the
course.
stream up and running.
I'm just glad you haven't asked
Facebook.
me to fix the tech problem. Well, hello everybody, and
No.
again, good luck with that. My name is Nicola Kinnard Comedy, and I am the director of NKC Equestrian Training, which is a coaching and training company for equine professionals and equine and canine practitioners. I'm a business and mindset coach, and Ine and I were just talking about our love for educating and supporting therapists, practitioners, and vets. And I work with clients all around the world. I'm based in the UK, and I am very lucky to support people across the UK, Europe, North America, and a couple of people in Australia as well, which is fantastic. So we are talking today about identity shifting, and we dreamt this one up back in the summer, didn't we, Ine? We thought this would be a really good topic for everybody listening and watching to really help you elevate what you might normally do kind of end of December, beginning of January. It's new year, we write down goals. It doesn't always kind of stick. So we thought it'd be really interesting to look at how you can kind of change yourself slightly to support your goals. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicola. I seem to have our stream on the Facebook page up and running. So
amazing.
Yay, success.
Brilliant. I'm just so glad you didn't ask me to fix the tech.
No. I love chatting to you about all things mindsets. I think it's been a while since our last one, so I'm looking forward to this. So let's jump right in. Before we jump right in, guys, if you're joining us live, it is so good to have you. Please comment, share who you are, where you are from, and yeah, hopefully as we go along, if you have questions, share them. We are here to chat with you. Okay, Nicola, when you think about stepping into your 2026 identity, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, really, really great question. There's probably loads of ways I could answer this, but my kind of initial thoughts is it's matching your beliefs, your energy, and that sort of deeper subconscious capacity about what you can have and what you can hold with your goals. Because quite often we just write our goals down in a notebook and we don't really have that deep change, which actually allows us to make those goals feel doable and sustainable as well. So it's really about deep change, which is much easier, I should say at this point, than I'm making it sound. It really is very straightforward, and I'm going to be outlining with Ine the steps to have this identity change. But it's really about setting yourself up for success, because I think we've all written down our goals end of December, early January. Can we even remember them by February? Do we check back in them March, April time? Suddenly we find we're at the end of the next year and it basically looked like the same as the last year. And that's a pattern that happens with so many people. So stepping into your 2026 identity is really about breaking that pattern and letting yourself succeed.
Okay, that's definitely something that happens to me. I'm not much of a goal setter at the beginning of the year because it just doesn't work, right? Okay, so why do you believe identity-based change is more effective than setting traditional goals or resolutions?
Yeah, definitely. So to me, when you work through these kind of like different levels of change, it sticks. It's not like motivation. We've all done this, haven't we? I'm going to be fitter. I'm going to go running, and we're really keen for like 3 days, and then I don't know. Here in the UK, it's probably raining. That might derail us, or something else comes up. Motivation doesn't last, but for lasting change, we need to change on several levels. So to me, coaching equine and canine practitioners, coaching vets, when you get people to change on these levels, which I'll go through in a second, you do see really lasting change, and you don't have to do all of these at once. That's the lovely way of working through these. You can start with where it feels a good place to start. You can just change one thing at a time, and it just goes so much deeper than this year I'll have X income or X number of clients, or I don't know, write this book or do this research paper. You actually just really let yourself do that. Would you like me to go through these kind of levels that I utilize for identity change?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the first one I would start off with is your vision or your why. So somebody might have jotted down their goals for, I mean, it might be that they're finishing off this year, 2025, or for 2026. Why do you want it? Like, why is this really important to you? Like, what's the point? How does this contribute to like a wider mission? And I'm thinking, Nate, knowing you and the rest of the team, that will really resonate with you guys, because you know you've got much bigger things than just a goal. Like, you've got a real big mission. So I think everyone's got a mission of some description. So tap into that. What's your why? What's your mission? And then what's your sort of like sense of self? Like, do you see yourself as somebody that can have that, achieve that, hold that? And if not, like, what's coming up? What needs to maybe slightly adjust? Do you need to find somebody else as inspiration that you can maybe follow online or something? So that sense of self is really important. And then beliefs and values. And I see this all the time, conscious thought, we're like, yes, I can do anything. Yes, this is the right goal. Subconsciously, it might be, have I got the time? If I was going to achieve X, would it mean I wouldn't have time for my family, my animals, sleep, anything else? We can't hit a goal when we've got opposing thoughts about what we actually want to achieve. And that happens so often. Yes, I want it, or yes, but don't have time. So we need to make sure our beliefs and values are really aligned with the goal, and becoming the person that can achieve this goal, and also achieve it in like a fun way, achieve it without, like burnout and lots of hustle and grind, but something that can actually hold this. And capacity is really important. Do you see yourself as actually physically able? It could be emotionally, it could be your time, it could be a skill set, as able to hold that. When I look at that one with people, often they're like, oh my gosh, yes, actually, I have got all the skills I need to do that. So that can be an interesting one to look at. Behaviors, routines, and habits. What behaviors, what routines, what habits do you need to put in place to be this person who achieves that goal? And then finally, your environment. And that could be your home environment. It could be your workspace. It could simply be your desk. It could be your car. If you're a mobile practitioner, it could be your clinic. But your environment is really, really powerful. It's giving us so many clues, and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, clues, I suppose. It's giving us lots of feedback about who we are, what we think we can do. So your environment needs to be aligned with you becoming the person that achieves and holds these goals. That was a long answer.
Okay. No, thank you. There's lots for us to kind of wade through there. I like it. So I just want to make sure I got those. The first one was the vision. The second one, do you see yourself as someone who can have that?
Yeah, like your sense of self. Do you see yourself as somebody that can have X amount of income, clients, a new center, whatever that is for you? Yeah.
Okay, that one is quite deep, really. Like, how do you? Okay, good. And then the last one, beliefs and values. There's some stuff you said there, right? So one of the things was your capacity, and you were going through. If you're thinking about achieving this goal, are you willing to like put in the time? Does it believe or think that you're going to be sacrificing to achieve that goal? I've often found that to be a reason why I don't pursue something, right? Like I'll think about it, and then I'll come up against, well, if I wanted to do this, I would need to put in X amount of hours per week. And to do that, I would need to carve out this slot of time, which means I'm sacrificing X, Y, or Z. And then I decide I don't want to do that, so I'm going to put this aside. So I've often had that thought process where I then put aside the goal and don't pursue it instead of sacrificing that thing. So how do you get past that point instead of having that that kind of capacity belief limit you?
It's a really, really great question. And I think sometimes that capacity is coming up for a really practical reason. Like if there are only 3 available hours and the only way you're going to get those hours is by never sleeping, or I don't know, whatever it is, you're missing something you genuinely want to do or need to do, then maybe that goal needs looking at again. Maybe there's another way it can be achieved. Maybe there's something else that can be delegated, because there's only so much we can have. But quite often what I would counterbalance that with is, do we actually need new time? Because we all can find ourselves, I'm sure everyone listening's got a business social media account. Therefore, scrolling on social media can feel like a business activity. I do believe quite often we have got time that we're not fully utilizing. So I think if it's really is genuine, like you're like, that's going to take me 10 hours a week and I just simply don't have that. Okay, well then that needs looking at, is there something else can be taken off your plate? Can that goal be reframed in another way? Can someone else be brought in to help you with that? Or is it a case of there's some hours that can be clawed back, or maybe minutes, from activities that, you know, you're just not focused, or the time is just kind of leaking, I think is a good way to describe when time just falls away, when we don't even know what we've been doing with it.
Yeah, leaking time. I can relate to that. Okay, so what are the most common patterns you see in professionals who remain stuck in their current identity? They just don't take the steps to move closer to who they want to become.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing to say is you don't know what you don't know. I think if you really don't have these tools for change, all you have got is kind of willpower and lots of conscious thought of, yes, I want to do this thing. That is going to keep you stuck. And that is, of course, nobody's fault, because I think, you know, we've all been there. Then you learn something and you're like, oh, wow, there was an easy way to do this. So that's one reason. The other 2, maybe 3 biggest things I see are these conflicting thoughts, which I've mentioned, where someone's like, yes, I definitely want X amount of new clients, Y income, 7 new team members, 5 clinics, whatever it is. But then there's that whisper that gets louder. Oh, you'll never be able to hold all that. Oh, you'll never keep it up. So those opposing thoughts, that really does keep people stuck, because you go round and round. You don't go forward. The belief that you can kind of hold it all. So you mentioned, you know, the idea, if I wanted to achieve this, I'd have to give up on this. It's, I suppose, stepping into that space where you believe you can have work-life balance, you can see friends, family, be with your own animals. And that's training yourself to hold more. It's not to do more. It's to hold more and to put more maybe systems, processes, team members in place, so that not everything needs you. So I see a lack of capacity, like subconscious capacity, as opposed to like literal time, keeping people stuck, because they don't believe that they can have this and this and this without, you know, burnout and feeling pretty rubbish. And then I think other people around you can really keep people in a sort of stuck pattern, stuck cycle. Because if everyone else is going, it's very hard, isn't it? Or it's difficult running your own business, or there's not enough clients. If you're hearing that, seeing it online, hearing it, reading it, whatever, that is keeping you cement style stuck. You are not going anywhere. So those would be the biggest things I see as keeping people in those patterns of staying stuck.
Okay, I love that. The people around you, I think that's such a good one. And then that belief that you can hold more, I think that is very, very powerful. Let's talk more about that. Like, how are you going to shift your belief and your understanding about your own capacity so that you can hold more?
I think the simplest way to do this is practicing being able to hold more. So maybe it's, you know, I'm a big fan of visualization, mental rehearsal. Maybe you, I don't know, you can't believe, or you find it hard to believe that you could switch off, that you could have a really great sleep every night, that you could have X income, Y team members, whatever it is you want, plus have, I don't know, the weekends off, or time with your family, or time with your own animals. And I get it. On paper, that might seem like a bit of a stretch, but we do also have an opportunity to go to the future and mentally rehearse whatever it is, just like an athlete would be on the start line rehearsing that, and a rider might be mentally riding a dressage test, show jumping around, whatever that looks like. We can do the same, and you could mentally rehearse seeing yourself closing the laptop, feeling relaxed and happy, having that time you crave with your family. You could practice that again and again and again. And we're talking like seconds at a time. This is not like hours of work. This is seconds. But it's just a disciplined habit, because then you're training your brain that you can have that, in the same way that that sprinter is training their brain that they can shift off those blocks pretty quick, or that rider is training themselves that they can have that lovely balance counter up to that jump, or whatever that looks like. So that would be how I support clients, and it's something I think is available to everybody as well.
Okay, so that mental rehearsal of what it looks like, what it feels like.
Yeah.
And what it, so bringing in your senses is something. So like, what does this feel like, and how, feeling it in your body. I think that's something. Is it also linked to like the stories that you're telling yourself, or the things that are repeats in your mind? Can you change that? So if you find yourself thinking, oh, I'm not going to have any time this weekend, can you change that thought pattern as well to start saying something different?
Yeah, definitely. Changing thoughts is something that can feel hard if we just do it on a conscious level, because so much of our behavior, at least 90, if not 97% of our behavior, is driven by our subconscious. I find the most effective way to change a thought is to find out where that thought came from. Is that a thought you've picked up from somebody else? Is that a pattern that you have seen? Is that, in your younger years, is that something that, when you really think about it, perhaps came in at a particular time? So for a lot of the practitioners I work with, when they were qualifying, uni exam time, that's where thoughts around sort of time scarcity can creep in. So can you see that when that thought came in, for kind of what that situation was? And yes, final exams, maybe you didn't feel like you had enough time, but that doesn't mean that belief has got to carry on for the next 5, 10, 40 plus years. So rather than just trying to, we need conscious awareness, but rather than just, oh no, not that thought, new thought, that's helpful, but it's really helpful to try and trace it back. And I find it's a lot easier for people to release that.
Okay, I haven't tried that, so I think that is useful. All right, so let's come back to like identity. Where do we start when we're trying to define who we want to be as professionals in the coming year, and not just what we want to achieve? So that identity focus instead of a goal focus.
Yeah, I love this question, and I think the way I'm going to answer this is by looking at the work that I have been doing, preparing myself and my company for next year and the next 5 years and beyond. It's starting with the contribution that I want to make, and I want my company to make, and also how I want to feel and how I want to live my life. And I think when we match those things together, that's who we can then see who we want to be, as opposed to just that very black and white X clients, X income, etc., etc. I think it needs to fit, a bit like you were saying, if I have if I was to work towards this goal, but then I didn't have the time, it doesn't really fit, does it? So we've got to find a way that whatever it is we want to achieve and what we want to contribute matches how we want to feel and how we want to live our lives.
Okay, I think that's really, really powerful. Yeah, I'm trying to think about how I want to do that for myself next year. I think this identity focus will definitely be one of the ways I come into next year. So thank you for that.
Excited. I'm so excited. Yeah, brilliant. Let me know you get on with it all.
Thank you. I will. I will. We will have more discussions next year, and then I will tell you how it's going. Okay,
Amazing.
so we've spoken about like our thoughts and how we're going to define that. How do we shape that into action? Because that is at the end of the day where we need to get, right? So, which are we building like daily and weekly habits that are going to be identity shaping? How do we do this? How do we take those thoughts into action?
Yeah, definitely. And action is so important, because we can all have information. We do actually need to implement it. A bit like in, everyone's clinical work, it's great to know something, you've got to do something with it. So for me, what I think is the fastest route to change is definitely building new habits. And I'm a big fan of habit stacking. So rather than,
Mm.
again, giving that example of, I don't know, going to the gym or going running, and you're really keen for a few days and then it sort of dies off. If you can link whatever it is you want to do with something that you are 100% going to do. So for me, that is turning on the kettle. While the kettle is boiling for my first cup of green tea in the morning, I am downing my first pint of many pints of water. And that just can't not happen in my world. So that is a great habit for me to tie in something new. So the two actions that I think make the biggest difference are some form of working on yourself. So this could be like anchoring in a new thought. It could be cementing in a new belief. It could be working on how you want to feel, but something on you. It could be gratitude. It could be that mental rehearsal, but something on you. And then something each day that actually moves you forward towards that goal that you want to achieve. Because it's really easy to get stuck in what I call busy work. And you'll have seen this, Innate. We can make ourselves a list, and then we can start with the things that perhaps don't really need doing, like making new templates for social media. We might play around with our brand colors. We could have a little bit of we could lose a day just fiddling on the website. Now, don't get me wrong, they all these things have a place, but actually the things that you need to do, like, I don't know, establish contact with somebody new in your area, or follow up on some potential client leads or something like that, they just sit there because we can get so caught up in the busy work. So when I say needle moving, it could just be one thing. You just make one phone call, you can send one WhatsApp message, but it's actual action that does move you forward, not things that make you feel like you're achieving stuff when it maybe doesn't really need doing at that particular time. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. Okay, let's talk more about that, because for me, when I feel like the to-do list is overwhelming and I don't know where to start anymore, the moment you feel overwhelmed, it's very difficult to prioritize and to figure
Mhm.
out what is important. Everything feels like has to
Mm.
be done right now, and it is so important. So when I get to that, I like to use, or sometimes if I can see it's coming, I like to use the quadrant system where you're looking at
Yeah.
what is urgent and important. And then I like to take myself to that place where I say, okay, I have to achieve 1, 2, 3 things today. Anything else is a bonus, and then I'll map out the week like that.
Yeah.
And that helps me get to the other side. What other ways are there to do that? And maybe how could I do that better if I'm still missing some steps in that process?
Yeah, I mean, the quadrant system works really, really well. I think it depends on the kind of things that regularly come onto your to-do list. So if it's the same offender, so to speak, that are on your to-do list week after week, then where I love batching stuff, and I love having things set into the diary. So
Mm.
let's just say, where are we? It's a Thursday, isn't it? So let's just say on a Thursday, somebody always, I don't know, creates social media content, or they prep up emails, or they have this set amount of time that they do that type of regular marketing activities, for example, that always needs to happen. And I think back to capacity, when you can show your subconscious mind that things do get done, it doesn't have to be done today. So when we've got this list like this, it can feel really incredibly overwhelming. So if you can train yourself that something happens either at a particular time, or it happens on a particular day, or it happens in a place with a particular person, or however that looks, it takes so much of that cognitive load off, because when we've got a huge list, quite often we spend a lot of time thinking about the to-do list as much as actually actioning them. So I think if you've got the kind of list where it is, the same things cropping up, finding regular slots and spaces, and maybe that could be again tied into a physical action. So like, I don't know, do you create, let's just go with social media content for somebody listening and watching. Do you do that best at your office or your home office? Do you do that best in like a cafe or a co-working environment? And let's just say you liked a co-working environment. You'd know, you'd be training your brain that when you pitch up in that place, we're creative, we're on fire, we do social media content here. It could be, you could achieve that without even going out the door. It could be changing your outfit, which might sound a bit bonkers, but you might have something that makes you feel more creative, or you might have something that makes you feel more clinical, or you might have something, it could be a jumper, it could be, I don't know, you just did your hair slightly differently, that makes you feel more professional. And you can, again, adopt that persona for that task. And I think that is, again, helpful to keep you in that sort of batch mode, so that you aren't having that, switching, because that's where we lose time and we lose a lot of brain power. I think my brain battery goes down like a phone battery if I switch tasks too much. So hopefully that helps you.
Yes, it does. It does. I think there's a lot there. I like because we're talking about identity and aligning our behavior to our identity. When I think of the quadrant system, and I'm thinking about prioritizing tasks, very often the important things that are not urgent, that we are choosing to do because they are going to advance us towards our goal. So let's say continuing education, or reaching out to new referral veterinarians. Depending on what your goal is and what you're wanting to do, that those tasks will look different. But because they are not urgent, we'll often postpone them. And for many of our brains, that might be something that we're doing just because we can't see, like it. The words have left me. But because we can't see an immediate effect, we put it off, and then it doesn't happen and it doesn't get done. And so we're not creating those changes. And so I think that, like you said, allocating a day. So on a Thursday, I water all my plants.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great example. Then you're not having to think, oh gosh, did I water these plants? When am I going to water?
Exactly.
Your brain knows when it happens. Yes, I love that.
Exactly. My next question is about going into survival mode, because I often find, again, if we become stressed or overwhelmed, it becomes more difficult for us to continue to action those important things that are driving us towards our goal, and it also becomes more difficult to figure out where our priorities are. So we were talking earlier about our beliefs and our capacity. And I often find when I get stressed or overwhelmed, it's actually linked to a belief that I'm holding, and not necessarily the physical reality around me. So how do you help your clients to reframe their reality so that the stress and anxiety can come out of the equation and they can continue on with their goal and with their actions?
Great. It's a great question. So for me, when we're in that overwhelmed, stressed, manic, whatever state, we are not in what I'd call our true self state. So when we are truly ourselves, we're calm, we're confident, we have clarity, we can think, we can make decisions, like it all feels doable. And so we have our sort of central part of ourselves, so let's call that self. And then, and this will make more sense to people if you've watched the Inside Out Disney Pixar movie, where we've got all these other emotions and they've got little characters. We do have very similar, and that's a brilliant movie. It really is. It's funny for children, but on a kind of mindset level, it is really powerful because it breaks down a concept of parts and how we have these other parts which can be effectively running the show. And so a stress part, it might be a part comes in when you feel stressed, and it doesn't like you feeling stressed. So it just kind of stops you from moving forward, because actually what it wants is for you to actually not be stressed. So to get out of survival mode, it comes down to stepping back into yourself and trying to identify who are those kind of main characters. And I know that sounds a bit wacky to say, who are those characters in your head? And that's why the movie is such a great way to very, very simplify family assistance therapy, which is what I'm referring to. And what those parts are there for. Why are they doing that? What's the beliefs that they are pushing forward? Because that's not really you. It's like somebody else is running the show. So like, I did actually rewatch that film recently with the children. There's a part like anxiety comes in, and anxiety is just controlling the motherboard of this girl's brain in the movie. That happens to us too. It could be excitement, it could be anger. You know, there's tons of different parts we could have. So yeah, that's how I support my clients and coach my clients to step out of that survival mode, which I think so many people just operate in on an ongoing basis, to just step back into yourself, but identify what's that sort of message that part of you is trying to tell you, because it can actually give you some really useful information.
I really like that. I love Inside Out. The kids love it as well. And like you said, just recognizing when our emotions are taking over the show, identifying where they're coming from. I like that. Okay. Every identity shift has a messy middle. What does that period look like, and how do we stay committed through it?
Sure. We were just talking, weren't we, before we went live, about like running summits and running conferences, and that's definitely got a messy middle to it. I do think all growth, we start off all enthusiastic, and then there's that lag time, messy middle, where we're like, oh, it's not here. And then the thing happens, and then we forget about the messy middle. So to me, it's stepping back into why you wanted to do that, why you wanted to become this person, and going back through those levels, those steps we identified at the beginning, to see what can make that messy middle feel less messy. So yes, we don't just go, okay, well, I'm just going to be a totally different person. Ding, that's it. My 2026 goals will all be achieved before New Year's Eve. Fantastic. It is going to take time. Some things happen faster, some changes quicker, some changes slower. I think re-evaluating your environment. Your environment is to me the easiest change and control. And it doesn't mean you've got to move house or anything drastic, but it can just really stop you, because it's just giving you feedback in a way that you might not even realize about who you are, and that if that's conflicting with who you want to become, that's really, really hard. So that would be my suggestions for the messy middle. Revisit those levels, reconnect with the why, and remember that habit stacking, so that change doesn't have to feel difficult. Because if you're going to make a coffee, and every time that kettle boils, you're repeating a new belief, or every time your clinic door opens or closes, you're just like, yes, I can do X, I am this. You don't have to make it harder. You can just tie one simple thing into something you're going to do, ideally many, many times a day. And my gosh, in a month, 90 days, you will feel so different.
Okay, I love that. Is there a way for us to enjoy the messy middle? Like, if we're expecting it, can we find joy and purpose in that space?
Yeah, definitely. I think we can see things as like a kind of rite of passage. So I'm going to use social media as a good example. And, you guys run many, many social groups and different platforms. You will have had the experience of posting something and nobody likes it and nobody comments. And that is a rite of passage. You will have the experience of tech fails. We were just chatting about that earlier. It's a rite of passage. Somebody writing something that maybe doesn't agree with an opinion you've shared, or I don't know, it just gave you a bit of a vibe. You're like, oh, it's a rite of passage. And I think when you expect it, like you said, but it doesn't need to derail you. It's just like, okay, cool. That thing's now happened to me, right? It just means I'm on my next steps forward. Because if you guys had been too scared of having a post that nobody liked, for example, you'd never ever have the groups, the reach, the accounts, the ability to share your messages that you do. That would have really kept you stuck. But that, I'm sure, has happened. You're all alive. You carry on. So yeah, I think expecting it and seeing it as a rite of passage really helpful.
Luckily, no one knows about the posts that just had no reach. They didn't see them, so
Yeah, that's so true, actually, isn't it? We're the only ones that see all of our content. Nobody else is watching everything. Yeah, that's so true.
Exactly. Okay, how do we measure our progress? I think this ties in very much, but especially when we're talking about an identity shift, how are you going to measure progress? Because that's not a tangible thing.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Much harder in some ways to track than client numbers or spreadsheets or something like that. Well, to me, it really is having an awareness of how you feel and how you're kind of operating. So if your mode of operating has been, you can get growth, you can push yourself and your business forward, but it comes with that sort of hustle mentality. You lose sleep, you feel a bit burnt out. If that's been your way of operating, well, to me, a massive indicator of success is that you're still moving forward, but you feel different. So you're moving forward, but you feel calmer. You're moving forward and you don't feel overwhelmed. So I think starting to really check in with how do you operate currently, and then how you do want to feel, and just checking how am I feeling? Because quite often, I suppose it's very similar to training a horse, isn't it? You just sort of, and you're like, is this really working? And then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, wow, look, we've just done X, Y, and Z. And it's very similar. You can feel like nothing's really happening and this is all a lovely idea, but where's the thing? And then suddenly you realize you've done it. You realize you've achieved that goal and you have become the person that can hold all that. But actually that change happened within you before the physical thing that you're working towards came to fruition. That always happens.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There's quite a bit there as well, because if the change is so gradual that you don't recognize it, and then you become accustomed to the new version of yourself as you're growing. So you mentioned like checking in with yourself. Do you also want to document that? I mean, journaling is fantastic.
Really helpful. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it can be incredibly helpful. I love an end of the day sort of review, or it could be an end of the week review and it can be really simple. One thing I love doing is almost like having a meeting with myself and going, okay, well, this is what has gone well. This is what we're going to stop doing next week. This is what we're going to start doing, and this is what we're going to keep doing. It can be as simple as that. Having that regular slot in your diary and in your head that happens. So whether it's at the end of the day, whether it's at the end of the week, month, quarter, but I think checking in regularly is really important. Documenting it, yeah, fantastic. Journaling is an amazing tool as well.
Okay. I've been seeing some really cute journals and different kinds of journals, like color coding, or having a code that's in color, so that you're just saying, like, from day to day, what level is your stress at, and you're just popping a marker in a block over a period of time. And I think from a visual perspective, that's really useful to just really quickly see the change. Have my stress levels changed over the last month, year, etc. And you could create like a very simple visual thing for anything, any area that you're trying to change. And that's appealing to me because it feels like the only work I need to do is to say, well, what level would I rate it at? And then write down a number or pop in a color into a little block and move on with my day. So
yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing when it comes to tracking progress, to quote my 10-year-old here, is trust the process. A bit like trusting that when you start your training, if you keep going and you fully immerse yourself in the process, you will come out the other end qualified. And if you keep going, keep seeing yourself holding the things you want to. You keep making these tiny little tweaks of thoughts, behaviors, your environment, and you do trust that process, you will come out the other side a different person. So I think it can be really helpful to track how you're feeling. And I think that trust is something that can feel uncomfortable for a lot of people to commit and trust, but it's something that everybody listening has already done because they trusted that process when they trained, or they're in the middle of training and they're currently trusting that process. So I know that everybody listening and watching can do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so if someone listening wanted to just take one small action today that aligns them with their 2026 identity, what do you think that should be?
I am going to go with your environment. It's really hard. It's really hard to pin it down to one thing. I'm going to go with your environment, and it could be as simple as your desk. For me, it's my kitchen. If my kitchen looks one way, I'm like, yep, I could run a country. If my kitchen looks another way, I'm just like, ugh, my energy just slumps. And I just think it is so powerful. It could be such a small change. We were talking about this on one of my group coaching programs the other day. And somebody said, you know, when they had plotted like an ideal day exercise, their ideal life, like seeing themselves in the future, writing that out, then I think it was their bedroom, everything's kind of had a bit of a hotel feel, sort of white. And she said, oh, I just went and bought a new duvet set. And now I feel like I wake up as that person that I could like visualize in the future. Nice. You know, we'd have to move house. And that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? But it could just be something really subtle. And bedding's a great example, isn't it? Because we're touching it, we're seeing it. And for her, that was a real big shift that just made her feel like a different person who, of course, then takes different actions, has a different reality and so forth. So, yeah, environment, that will be my one. And that is hard to do. Yeah, just one.
I love that you said that because I wrote that down like before I asked this question, because I was like, you keep saying environment and I keep putting it to the side and not thinking about it. So I was going to ask you to expand on that, and now you have. I think it is, I've turned my office has changed so much in the last year and a half. And what that kind of highlights for me is like, one, I've managed to keep plants alive, and I've never had green fingers at all, never. And now I can say that I do because I've propagated plants successfully. And so
you changed your identity.
That identity can change. It can change. Don't hold on to something that you've been if it's not who you want to be. So sure, it's taken me like 10 years to develop green fingers, but doesn't matter how
did it
it's taken.
Yeah.
Okay, so earlier we were talking about that stressed survival mode, and you were talking about Inside Out, the movie, and that made me think about a book that I'm listening to that I stumbled on by accident, and it's called A Path Through the Jungle by Professor Steve Peters. And I want to recommend that to our listeners because it's been really interesting listening to this book, because I have the audiobook version. It's been really, really interesting. And it talks about that emotional, it actually talks about separating your brain into your true self, and then like the monkey who takes over when you go into survival mode or your emotions are ruling. So there's essentially these two systems, and then the computer that operates everything. And I cannot explain it properly, but he does a really good job of it. And it's a really good way of thinking about our brains and our emotions. So I wanted to make that book recommendation. And then I wanted to ask you if you have a book recommendation for us to take us into the new year. I'm sure that I hope that we'll have some time in the holiday season to do some reading. So what would you recommend?
That is a fantastic question. I have to say one of the books that I have found most helpful when it comes to changing my identity have been the books by Denise Duffield-Thomas. She is an Australian money mindset expert. And why I found her particular teachings really helpful is because I found her really, really relatable. And she was holding an identity, but particularly at that time, I was just like, I felt a zillion miles away from. And her advice is all very, very practical. Her third, all her books are great, but she has one that's just about being lucky, one that's about making money, and one that's about making your life easier, basically, in life and business. And the third one I think will particularly resonate with people. But yeah, it is all about little incremental upgrades and changes that make you become the identity that you want, and how she talks about giving yourself permission, particularly in her money book, to be your version of a wealthy person, a wealthy woman, a successful practitioner, whatever that looks like for you. Because sometimes we think we have to look one way. Like, I don't know, I couldn't do that because my hair's not blonde or whatever. We actually get to create that whatever version we want. So yeah, I really, really recommend those. They're available on, as audio books. They're pretty easy to kind of skim read through, but she's so much practical advice. I think that will be really helpful for everybody.
Amazing. Denise Thomas.
Duffield Thomas.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up, and then we'll share that in the comments. So you guys can go read that. And to our listeners, if you have any book recommendations for us going into the holiday season, let us know, and we'll look into those. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicola, for your time today. It's been so much fun chatting to you, as always.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Ine, for having me, and thank you to everybody watching and listening.
Awesome. Have a great day, guys. Bye.